Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, June 11th, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I am joined on today's episode by Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran
Hey, everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hi.
All right, let's jump right into the news today. Let's dive into the deep end, HT. Tell me about
Sorry. You jumped ahead of that on laughing at your pun. Continue.
Well, tell me about the latest Aquaman news that we've heard about this new movie from James Wan.
Yes. Anyways, what I was doing was laughing at the deep end pun, which I realized only was funny after you mentioned it was Aquaman. Anyways, Aquaman 2 has a title. It's called Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And this is what it could refer to. So as we know, in Aquaman, there were 7 kingdoms total, although there are only 6 mentioned in the film itself, and there's a 7th lost kingdom, of which the sequel will cover. And we learned this from James Wan's Instagram photo, which he posted a picture of the production meeting for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The film is now entering production, and there was a report a couple weeks ago from Production Weekly that the film would be going under the working title Necris, which is actually the name of a domed underwater city in DC Comics, which only exists on the material plane for brief periods of time and contains a militaristic people ruled over by the tyrant king Mongo. So if we're going to go into what this mysterious 7th unnamed lost kingdom could be, it's a possibility that this is Necris, and that this is the city that you'll either be found or go to war with Atlantis in the follow-up to Aquaman. And if you guys want to know what the other kingdoms were, there was Atlantis, Zebel, the kingdom of the fishermen, the kingdom of the brine, the kingdom of the trench, and the kingdom of the deserters.
Okay, yeah, I definitely needed that refresher because I didn't remember any of them except for the trench, which was supposed to
people and the crab people.
I only saw Aquaman that one time in theaters back in, what was that, 2018 or something?
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a little bit now. Chris, I want to go to you. You're like maybe the biggest Aquaman fan that I know. You're always sort of standing up for that movie and singing its praises. What do you think about this title and this new information?
Yeah, I'm all in on Aquaman 2. What is it? The Lost Kingdom? What is it? I already forget what it's called.
Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
And the Lost Kingdom. Whatever it's called, I'm saying it. I love...
I'm excited for this movie that I don't know the name of.
Yeah. I never cared about Aquaman as a character, but I love the Aquaman movie just because it's very silly and it knows it's silly. It's like a breath of fresh air for the DCEU, which when this came out, the DCEU was still like, this is a dark and serious thing for adults. And Aquaman is like, the title card is spelled out in fish. And it's like, that's what I want. Give me just a big, silly, colorful movie. Whereas, the other DCEU movies are dark and the color has been desaturated. Aquaman is just bright and lively. And I'm all in on whatever goofy world building James Wan wants to do with this sequel.
So, HT, what do you think about this? I think you're also a fan of the first Aquaman, right?
I am a fan. I gave it a rave review when I saw it, and I predicted that Chris would like it, and I thought you would like it too because you're a fan of James Wan and also that kind of goofy storytelling. But alas, I was wrong in that. But yeah, the octopus are playing a bongo. It's fun. Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for James Wan to be back in the director's seat. I think he had said previously that there's going to be a bit more of his horror sensibilities in Aquaman 2. So I don't know how that will play out, but I'm excited to see how it will. And I'm always a big fan of big mythology world building too. I like mythology stuff in general. So the idea of a lost kingdom is very tantalizing, very evocative. I like it.
Cool. All right, so let's move to our next item here, which is the return of a character that I personally thought that we would never see again, but is evidently happening and on the way again. Chris, tell me what's going on in the world of Peacock.
Ted, the movie about a bear that sounds exactly like Peter Griffin, is becoming a TV show. Yeah, Seth MacFarlane, who directed the 2 Ted movies, which also starred Mark Wahlberg, is executive producing and in talks to lend his voice to the character again for a Peacock TV show, which has just got a straight to series order.
So, is there any information about like what is going to, the plot or anybody else who's going to be involved or anything like that?
Yeah, there's nothing right now. Like I very much doubt Mark Wahlberg is going to be in a Peacock show, but I guess you never know. But beyond that, we really don't know what it's about. Obviously it's going to be a sentient teddy bear who curses and drinks beer, and everyone's going to be like, "See, that's comedy," and that's what the Ted show will be. And I guess there'll be a human character because there needs to be. And I don't know. I don't really care, Ben. Can we just move on from this story?
Well, I was just going to, yes, very soon we will, Chris, I promise you. I was just going to ask you, the Ted movies came out several years ago, and comedy was just in a very different place then. So are you, I can tell from your tone of voice that you're not like thrilled about the idea of watching this TED show, which is totally fine. But are you surprised that a TED show is coming out now? Or is this one of those things where like, well, it's based on a thing that people know, so I guess it was sort of inevitable.
Yeah, that's where I am. I'm at the point where it's like, well, no wonder they're doing this because there's nothing new anymore, Ben. Everything is, we need to reboot something, or we need to keep something going, or we need to explain how something started. There's no one wants to create something new, and this is Ted is a tested property. I didn't know this when I wrote up the story. I learned that Ted is the highest grossing original comedy of all time. In other words, it's the biggest comedy ever that's not, based on something else or a sequel.
Is that true? Really?
Yes. So Ted is a hit. So, that explains why someone somewhere was like, well, this made money once. We need to keep this going.
Wow, that is nuts. I remember stats like that being thrown around when The Hangover was coming out, but I guess this did better than that. But man, that is wild to think about.
Advertise that more. It's so weird.
To be clear, that was in the official press release, so Peacock could be blatantly lying, but I feel like they would get in trouble if they lied like that blatantly. So I'm going to take their word for it.
Man. Okay. Well, I guess you've set us up there, Chris, for a transition into our next story here, which, you're talking about the state of Hollywood and there being no original ideas anymore. HT, tell me about Mindy Kaling's Velma show. I think we've talked a little bit about like the existence of this show, maybe when it was first announced, but now we've learned a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it was first announced back in, I think it was February, when HBO set a string of adult animated shows that was coming to HBO Max, and one of which was Velma, which is an original 10-episode comedy series about the origins of Velma Dinkley, the unsung brains and leader of the Mystery Inc. gang. And this is a series that we've learned recently that the series will have no dog, no van, and the character will be of East Asian descent. So this is going to be set in a world where there's going to be no Shaggy, no Scooby-Doo, and the character will be voiced by Mindy Kaling and will be depicted as being of East Asian descent. So a couple of big dramatic changes from the character as has been traditionally depicted for the past 50 plus years.
Okay, so I guess the answer to the question why has already been answered by what Chris was talking about in the previous subject, so we don't really have to go over that too much. But HT, I'm curious what you think about this, because you and I are both really, really big fans of Never Have I Ever, which is I think the most recent show that Mindy Kaling created.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say we're really big fans of Scooby-Doo. I was not expecting you guys to share a Scooby-Doo love.
We are really big fans of Scooby-Doo.
We're big Scoob heads. All right, continue.
So considering that, HT, considering our fandom of this brand new original thing that Mindy Kaling recently created, what do you think about her diving into this world, and what do you think about the changes that are being made to the sacred Scooby-Doo core text here?
I mean, sure, why not? I like Scooby-Doo. I watched it a fair few times as a kid growing up when the reruns of the classic animated series would show up, and I've seen some of the films and various things. It's a classic. It's fun. I think, being as old as it is, it's due for some makeovers and reimaginings every now and then. I don't actually mind it that much. I've even seen the live action movies, and I was convinced for a long time that the first live action movie was better than it was, but then I watched it recently and it's not. It's not that great. But I don't have any problem with this. I think it's kind of a given considering that this is an origin story to begin with. So of course it's going to be before she joins Mr. Inc. and it's before she meets Scooby and Shaggy. And why can't she be depicted as East Asian? There's Mindy Kaling is of Indian descent, and there's actually been a time when Velma was depicted as by an Asian actress before. She was portrayed by Haley Kiyoko, who played Velma in the live action made for TV movie Scooby-Doo, The Mystery Begins in 2009. So I think this is a property that is so has been going on for so long and has been remade and reimagined so many times that I don't really have any issue with it.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess let's move to our next story then, which is a horror franchise that is evidently being planned. Chris, tell me about this one.
Yes, so Chad Hayes and Carrie W. Hayes, they're a team of screenwriting brothers who wrote the first Conjuring movie, and they co-wrote The Conjuring 2 with a few other people. They're teaming up with Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed almost all of the Saw films. Not all of them, but a fair amount, including the newest one, which was Spiral from the Book of Saw, to make a brand new horror franchise, which is inspired by the true story of the LaLaurie Mansion, which is in New Orleans. And this has been fodder for horror before. And if you go to New Orleans, there's like a million ghost tours in New Orleans, and they'll all take you to the outside of the LaLaurie Mansion. You can't go in it anymore. It's not like open to the public. And a season of American Horror Story used it. And the story is that back in sometime in the late 1700s, actually it was probably the 1800s. Sorry, I don't have the actual date when this happened, but sometime in that era, there was this woman, Delphine LaLaurie, who lived in the house. She was married to a doctor, and the house caught fire. And when the neighbors rushed to help put out the fire, they discovered that Delphine LaLaurie had been torturing and murdering her slaves. And she basically escaped from New Orleans before anyone could call her out on this. And she was never, put on trial or never reprimanded or anything like that for what she did. And after that, the story sort of grew and got embellished. And it's really kind of hard to decipher fact from fiction at this point. But basically, a lot of bad stuff happened in this house, which means everyone thinks it's haunted. And now they're turning this into a horror franchise. And I'm sure, Ben, you're going to say, what do you think of this, Chris? So I'll cut you off right here.
Yes.
So, look, I love horror. I love historical horror. I love, ghost tours. That said, I'm a little uneasy about this because, as I mentioned, the whole basis for the reason that this house is supposedly haunted, and I don't think it is because I don't believe in ghosts, but that's another story. The whole basis for the story is, the torture and murder of black slaves, and the idea of building like a fun horror franchise around that basic, trauma seems very questionable to me. I'm not saying you can't make a movie about that. You can, and especially if you do it in a sensitive way, but it's clear they just want to make, the next Conjuring here, or the next Saw, or the next Insidious. And I'm a little worried that it's going to be, I guess, tasteless, for lack of a better word. So I'm a little apprehensive about this. I love horror. I love The Conjuring. So I like Chad Hayes and Carrie Hayes, but I'm not really sure how I feel about building an entire franchise based on, literally like the blood of murdered slaves. So yeah. I'm a little uneasy about that.
Yeah. So let's put the content of this project aside, for just a second, and think about the way that this information is being presented, where it's sort of like a super group in music. The lead guitarist from this band and the front man from this band are coming together. These people from the horror world of horror movies are coming together to make not just a movie, but a franchise. Isn't there something are you hesitant at all about them I guess, calling their shot to such a degree here instead of just saying, all right, we're going to start with one movie and then, if it's good, going for there? Or is it sort of, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's counting your chickens before you hatch. It's the dark universe symptom all over again.
Yeah.
Like when the first Conjuring came out, no, like even if they were behind the scenes being like, we're going to make this a franchise, I don't remember anyone being like, this is going to be the start of an entire universe. And, it eventually became that, and it's been successful, but it's felt like that has been built up organically. It wasn't like, let's make a franchise. And, to announce that right off the bat seems like they're very much tempting fate. Because what if this first movie sucks and no one likes it? Then it's going to be like, well, never mind. So,
Yeah, even Marvel didn't announce that the MCU was going to be a thing. They just sort of snuck that first post-credit scene into the very end of the first Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. So. Like, I feel like everyone wants to make a shared universe now. Everyone wants a cinematic universe, but no one really understands that you need to sort of earn that. Like, I'm not an MCU fanboy, but I feel like the MCU has earned their cinematic universe. Like they built it up organically, and you can't just like jump in and be like, here it comes, because you're setting yourself up for failure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So our last news story here today involves a Marvel show, actually. The upcoming show, She-Hulk, which is about this character named Jennifer Walters, who is Bruce Banner's cousin, the cousin of the Hulk, and she gets a blood transfusion from her cousin and basically gains like Hulkish superpowers. But whereas the Hulk sort of, the Bruce Banner version has trouble controlling his temper and sort of hulks out and loses a lot of his like mental capacity while he's in that state. Jennifer Walters retains all of her intelligence and most of her control while she's in this sort of Hulk mode. And she's actually a lawyer in the sort of Marvel universe, even as this She-Hulk iteration of the character. So Jameela Jamil, who you might recognize from the delightful NBC sitcom The Good Place, has been cast in this show, and she's going to be playing the villain of the show. So Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black is going to be the lead character. She's going to be Jennifer Walters, the titular She-Hulk. But Jamil is going to be playing this character named Titania. And this character is a frequent rival of She-Hulk's in the comics. She was this sort of short, unpopular, embittered high school girl named Mary McPherson in the comics before she eventually came in contact with Dr. Doom and got superpowers from him and sort of became this like, way taller, more muscular, superhuman sort of physical feat. So we don't really know, the extent of their backstory or any of that kind of stuff. This is sort of typical Marvel secrecy stuff. But Renee Elise Goldsberry from Hamilton, Ginger Gonzaga from Kidding, Tim Roth, and Mark Ruffalo are all going to be in the show as well. So I just want to sort of like let people know in case you missed this news. This is sort of exciting. Jameela Jamil was really, really great in The Good Place. That was where I sort of became aware of her for the first time. HT, Chris, any thoughts on this? I know, like I said, we don't have like too many details to go on here, but any just general feelings about Jameela Jamil or She-Hulk?
Yeah, it's hard to say how Jameela Jamil will act in this show because The Good Place was, I think, her first acting role. She was a TV host presenter for the majority of her career, and she's only just started to like enter into the acting industry properly after The Good Place. And she's talked about how The Good Place was kind of her acting workshop with Ted Danson, Kristen Bell helping her a lot. So it's hard for me to separate her from her The Good Place character because that's the only character I've ever seen her as, and also the only character that she's probably, I think, ever played. So I'm basically what I'm saying is I don't know, but I'm interested.
Awesome. All right. I think actually Brad wrote an explainer piece about Titania, this character that she's going to be playing, and going in very extreme detail about the comics backstory and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're curious and interested about that, I will link to Brad's piece in the show notes so you can check that out. All right, that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can find more about all of these stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com, of course, and linked inside the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.